What is The Ultimate Fighter? It is a reality show that can turn ordinary people into world-class fighters. A show that has produced some of the biggest names and champions in MMA history. The Ultimate Fighter is not just a reality show, it's a life-changing opportunity for aspiring fighters who want to make it to the UFC. It's a brutal test of skill, endurance, and willpower. It's a chance to train with the best coaches, fight with the toughest opponents, and earn the respect of millions of fans. The winner is granted a six-figure contract and a roster spot in the UFC. Several of the alumni of the show have not only earned their place in the promotion, but also captured a UFC title and become a regular name in the UFC betting odds. But who are the best fighters who ever came out of the show? Who are the ones who left a lasting mark on the sport and the culture? Who are the Ultimate Fighters? In this video, we'll reveal the top 10 Ultimate Fighter winners of all time. We'll rank them based on their achievements, skills, and legacy. Let's get on with it. Number 10. Nate Diaz. He's a legend in the UFC even though he never became a champion. He's one of the most popular and exciting fighters in the sport, with millions of fans who love his attitude and style. He made history when he fought Conor McGregor twice, breaking records for the most pay-per-view buys ever. He started his UFC career by winning The Ultimate Fighter, beating Manuel Gamborin with a submission. He had many ups and downs in his journey, but he always put on a show for the fans. He got the chance to fight for the title in 2012, but he lost to Benson Henderson. That didn't stop him from becoming a star, as he kept fighting the best in the world. Number 9. Ryan Bader. He fulfilled his Ultimate Fighter dream when he knocked out Vinny Magalhães in the first round of the finale. He then had a great run in the UFC, beating some big names like Rashad Evans, Rogerio Nogueira, and Quentin Jackson. But he wanted more than that. He wanted to be a champion. So he left the UFC and joined Bellator, where he achieved something amazing. He became a double champion, holding both the light heavyweight and heavyweight titles at the same time. He defended his light heavyweight title once against Linton Vassell in 2017, but he lost it to Vadim Nemkov in 2020. He still has the heavyweight title though, and he defended it against Jay Congo in 2022. Ryan Bader is one of the best fighters in Bellator history, and he's not done yet. Number 8. Forrest Griffin. He's one of the most important fighters in UFC history. He was part of the fight that changed everything for the UFC. He fought Stephan Bonnar in the first ever finale of The Ultimate Fighter, and it was a war. They traded punches for 3 rounds, and they won over millions of viewers who watched them on TV. It was a close fight, but Forrest won by decision. That fight made him a star, and he went on to have a fantastic career in the UFC. He only lost twice before he got a shot at the title in 2008. He fought Rampage Jackson, who was one of the best fighters in the world at that time. Forrest beat him by decision and became the UFC light heavyweight champion. He joined the elite group of fighters who held that belt, but he couldn't keep it for long. He lost it to Rashad Evans at his next fight, but he still had some great wins after that. He beat Rich Franklin and Tito Ortiz twice before retiring in 2012. Today he's an ambassador for the UFC and MMA, and he's still loved by many fans who remember his epic fight with Bonnar. Number 7. Rashad Evans. He was another Ultimate Fighter winner who rocked the UFC. He won the show in 2005 by edging out Brad Imes in a close fight. He then went on a tear, winning 7 fights in a row and only drawing once with Tito Ortiz. He earned his title shot by knocking out Chuck Liddell with a brutal punch that sent him flying. He faced Forrest Griffin, who had just won the title from Rampage Jackson. Rashad was unstoppable that night, and he took the title from Forrest with a TKO in the 3rd round. He was the undefeated champion, and everyone respected him, but his reign was short-lived as he lost the belt to Lyoto Machida in his first defense. He never got the belt back, but he still had some great fights and victories. He also became a great ambassador for MMA, and he now works as an analyst for many media outlets. Number 6. Chris Leben. Chris Leben isn't the greatest technical fighter to ever appear on The Ultimate Fighter, and he's an often troubled individual with 2 drug test failures and several run-ins with the law. But Leben is also one of the most popular fighters to come out of the show. His heart and willingness to take 10 punches in order to deliver one of his own has endeared him to fans in a way that few others have. He'll never be a champion, but you can always count on the Crippler to deliver an exciting fight. Number 5. Matt Serra. Serra's record since leaving The Ultimate Fighter isn't great. It's not even good, but his shocking win over Georges St-Pierre for the UFC welterweight title in 2007 remains the biggest upset in the history of the UFC. For that, Serra deserves a place on this list. Sarah fought in the UFC long before appearing on The Ultimate Fighter Season 4, a season that focused on fighters attempting to make a comeback in the UFC. The winner would earn a title shot at St. Pierre, and Sarah capitalized by beating Chris Lytle in the finals. Sarah would lose the belt in his rematch with St. Pierre, but his win over one of the greatest champions in UFC history cements him as an Ultimate Fighter standout. Number 4. Michael Bisping, aka The Count. He was a legend in both the middleweight division and the Ultimate Fighter show. He first joined the show as a fighter in Season 3, where he faced Team Ortiz and Team Shamrock. He was unstoppable, finishing all 3 of his opponents with strikes, including Josh Haynes in the final. He fought in the light heavyweight division at first, but he decided to move down to middleweight after losing to Rashad Evans. He later became a coach on the show. The first time, he coached against Dan Henderson, who he faced at UFC 100. It was a brutal fight, and Henderson knocked him out with a huge punch that became famous. The second time, he coached against Jason Miller, who he fought in the finale. This time, Bisping got his revenge, knocking out Miller in the 3rd round. Bisping had a mixed record for the next 5 years, but he never gave up. He won 3 fights in a row and got the chance to fight for the title on short notice. He shocked everyone by knocking out Luke Rockhold in the 1st round and became the first British UFC champion. He was so happy that he decided to defend his title in his hometown of Manchester against his old enemy, Dan Henderson. He got his revenge again, beating Henderson by decision. Bisping was a champion and a hero, and he still is. He now works as a commentator and analyst for the UFC, and he's made his mark in history. Number 3. Josh Koscheck. Josh Koscheck may never be a champion, but it doesn't matter. Koscheck went into the Ultimate Fighter house with a fantastic wrestling game and not much else. He didn't really know how to strike. He wasn't a mixed martial artist, but Koscheck realized one thing early on. It's better to be hated than forgotten. Koscheck turned himself into the ultimate bad guy with his constant bullying of Chris Leben, which in turn led to one of the most anticipated weekly fights in the history of the show. That fight turned The Ultimate Fighter from just another reality show into must-see television. Koscheck had a decent UFC career. He transformed himself from a wrestler into a total mixed martial artist with deadly punching power. He fought for the championship and has given fans plenty of memorable moments. Through it all, Koscheck remains one of the most hated fighters in the UFC. It's a role he relishes. Number 2. Robert Whittaker, aka The Reaper, was a beast in the middleweight division. He had one of the coolest nicknames and one of the best records ever. He started his UFC dream in 2012 when he joined The Ultimate Fighter, The Smashes. It's a show where 8 Australians fought 8 Brits. He knocked out 2 of his opponents on the show and then beat Brad Scott by decision in the final. He was the winner of the show and he was ready for the UFC, but he had a rough start, losing 2 fights in a row to Court McGee and Stephen Thompson. He was fighting in the welterweight division, but he decided to move up to 185 pounds. That was a smart move because he became unstoppable in the middleweight division. He won 8 fights in a row, beating some big names like Uriah Hall, Derek Brunson, and Jacare Souza. He also had 2 epic fights with Yoel Romero, and he won both of them. He became the champion and everyone feared him, but then he met the last stylebender, who was too fast and too skilled for him. He lost his title to him in 2019 and he was heartbroken. He tried to get back on track, winning 3 fights in a row against top fighters. But then he faced Adesanya again in 2021 and he lost again. It was a close fight and some people thought he won, but the judges didn't agree. Whittaker may not have been the champion for long, but he was one of the best fighters ever. He had some wars that fans will never forget. Number 1. Kamaru Usman. He is the best Ultimate Fighter winner ever. He was the welterweight champion and he had defended his title 5 times. He's only had a couple of hard fights in his UFC career and he has finished 3 of his title fights. Usman started off his UFC career perfectly in 2015 on The Ultimate Fighter American Top Team versus Black Zillion's finale. It was a show where 2 rival teams fought each other. He finished Hayder Hassan with an arm triangle choke in the final and proved that he was the best on the show. He may not be as good as Georges St. Pierre, who was the greatest welterweight ever, but he had big plans for his career. You just watched the top 10 Ultimate Fighter wins of all time. These are the champions who have proven themselves in the octagon and earned their place in the history of mixed martial arts. But the octagon is a constantly evolving arena and the legends continue to rise. Stay tuned for more epic battles, fierce rivalries, and unforgettable moments in our next video. Don't blink, fight fans!